Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wayne's World of Science and Technologies. Pardon me if I'm looking off to the side. I have my notes on the other screen. And this is only a single slide. You won't have to actually watch anything. Anyways, today we're going to talk about energy and economic efficiency and national defense. Since the first concerns about the climate crisis, there's been arguments about what is the right thing to do, with the definition of right often being twisted into a 10th dimensional pretzel. Those arguments are often based on dated data and either ignore trend lines or assume they will go on to infinity. Guessing about tomorrow is difficult, but some things are fairly certain. 2 plus 2 will equal 4 tomorrow just as it does today. Looking at current data and trends, we can come up with short-term projections, or maybe short-term delusions if we look at the wrong things. As to more complex things like women's skirt headlines and changes in youth culture, the soft factors, well, that's for someone who has a working crystal ball. Civilization has always been about energy usage. The rich and powerful could use more energy. They just had the military or financial power to gather more energy to their use, whether that was energy in the form of wind, water, fire, or muscle. Just over 300 years ago, the first practical steam engine was invented. Suddenly, by burning either wood or preferably coal, our first fossil fuel, you could produce far more energy in the form of mechanical work than ever before. Humanity was liberated from the limitations of natural energy and now had access to a new and promising source. Pollution? Hey, what's pollution? So what if it smells bad? The wind will carry the smell away. And coal does have a far higher energy density than wood. You don't waste as much resources moving the same amount of energy because you only need to move 2/3 of the fuel. That's a huge advantage cost-wise. It isn't surprising that the Industrial Revolution first took off in England, a country with large coal veins close to the surface. It was a failure to consider a future with millions of fossil fuel burning pollution sources in small areas like London and Paris. But, hey, someone made money, and it provided employment. It also forced an early reckoning. You couldn't put someone who didn't know basic math into many of these jobs, and knowing basic math meant you had to have at least basic literacy. Universal education was an attempt, in some ways, to provide more workers at state expense. That gave a huge number of people tools that enabled them to start business of their own was an unexpected bonus, I suspect. All those smaller businesses, of course, sold and bought from the large firms and made them more efficient. If you've got a firm which specializes in maintenance of a specific type of machine and they do it really well, why not hire them rather than doing it yourself? Over time, we moved from coal to oil. Oil is nearly double the energy density of coal, and while it leaks, and coal usually doesn't, it's also a lot easier to move. You can pump it, yeah. It also doesn't self-combust spontaneously or spontaneously explode. And yes, coal does spontaneously explode. What happens is you get a fire. Coal can spontaneously combust, at which point you get a fire. If there's a lot of dust in the area where the fire occurs and it is enclosed, you will have what is called a coal dust explosion. They are not fun. Anyway, a lot of people considered this an advantage. You can probably guess why they considered the not exploding and not spontaneously burning advantage. I'm an old man now. I worked as a kid in my uncle's greenhouses. He heated them using coal. Maintaining the powered automatic feed auger was a constant necessity. If things got too humid, the coal clumped up and had to be broken up using shovels. Sometimes even dry coal would block the auger, which meant more shovel time. There was a coal to coal dust in the coal room and outside of the boiler room every time we got a delivery. You don't know how much work was involved just keeping the damn powered auger running, and the powered auger was still a hell of a lot better than having to shovel all that coal by hand, which is exactly how my grandfather did it. Yeah. Going to oil, you don't have that problem all of a sudden. You can just pump it. Anyways, I also had the misfortune of having the Hearn generating station as a customer. They regularly sent the company I worked at forklifts coated in coal dust, and our mechanics hated working there because of the dust. It got into everything, including your lunch. And, well, everyone loathed the place. Oil is a nuisance if it leaks or your ship sinks, but otherwise it's far easier on everyone. Oil burning still smells bad, but not as bad. It isn't as much work to move the energy in the form of oil into your engine or boiler. You can transport it for long distances using these neat things called pipelines. It doesn't mess up your boiler burners anywhere near as much, so there's a lot less maintenance per power produced per unit of energy. And if you're wondering what I mean, look up the World War I Battle of Jutland, and you can find reports on the problems the German ships had with their coal grates getting blocked because the fuel they were using wasn't the best. And even good coal still messed up the grates. It was a mess. Anyway, the next stage was natural gas. Less energy density than oil, but it's more environmentally friendly and far easier to produce. Sulfur is a common contaminant in both oil and natural gas, but easier to remove from natural gas. Excuse me. I will learn how to talk sometime this year, I promise. Natural gas can also be transported via pipeline and has become very popular. Now, that was the basic situation in the year 2000. People were getting concerned about how to reduce CO2 emissions, but the way forward wasn't really visible. There's a push to close the remaining coal and oil-fired plants, some work on energy efficiency, but that was it. Fast forward today and things have changed massively. In 2000, renewable energy accounted for roughly 19% of global energy generation. Today it accounts for over 30%. The mix has changed. Hydropower was 17%. Now it's dropped to 14.3%, even though more hydro dams have been added because wind and solar have been taking larger shares of the pie. And it comes down to cost. Going from best to worst, we have nuclear at $140 to $220 per megawatt. This is US dollars, by the way. Coal at $70 to $170 per megawatt. Offshore wind at $70 to $157 per megawatt. Geothermal at $66 to $109. Combined cycle gas at $50 to $110. Utility scale solar at $40 to $86, and the winner is onshore wind with $40 to $78 per megawatt hour. Onshore wind is far cheaper than coal. It's considerably cheaper than nuclear as well. I mean, way cheaper actually. There's a lot of advantages to it. These numbers are the estimated levelized cost of energy for 2025, and here location matters a lot. If you're close to where the gear is made and your fuel supply is close, some fossil fuels can sometimes compete with onshore wind and utility solar, but very, very rarely. And along the fossil fuel supply chain, manufacturers are abandoning the less popular fuels. It may no longer make sense to produce a product for the market if it drops, and if your power plant is using that product and everybody starts saying, it's not worth it anymore, you're in trouble. Coal is going away. The North American Coal Company, NACO, saw this years ago and diversified into other markets. The reason I know about this is I was in forklifts and they bought 2 forklift companies. Other coal companies have closed as no longer profitable, and more will. Donald Trump's bold promise to bring back coal ran into reality. Coal is no longer cost competitive. As of 2023, 10 countries had hit 100% power generated by renewables. And these countries are Albania, Bhutan, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Lesotho, Nepal, Paraguay, Iceland, and Costa Rica. These countries are in a fantastic position. Any hydrocarbons they can produce are available for export, and they aren't sending money abroad. Their costs are lower, and those costs are spent at home in maintenance, which provides an economic boost. In the G7, the best score belongs to Canada, with 67% power generated by renewables, including a lot of hydropower generation with increasing wind and solar installations. Germany is at 53%, Italy is at 45%, France is at 27%, The United States is at 23% and Japan is at 22%. For all of Trump squawking about renewables, the United States does seem to like them. Thinking defense terms, we need to consider nuclear power generation as well. Adding nuclear non-fossil fuel generation to totals brings France to 92%, Canada to 81%. Italy and Germany have no nuclear power plants, so they stay at 53 and 45. The United States does have some nuclear power plants, so they're at 41%, and Japan at 31%. From a defense perspective, France and Canada are in fairly good shape if blockaded from fuel. Germany and Italy are militarily and economically ineffective past the point where they've used up their fossil fuel reserves. The United States has enough in-country production to survive, and they just basically don't need to care. Japan, well, the Japanese numbers make me shudder, or would if anything could these days. Japan is in severe trouble if they can't keep the sea lanes open, which may explain the Japanese self-defense forces' preoccupation with power projection as compared to local defense. Going nuclear renewable has huge environmental benefits, and with renewable is almost always less expensive. Not nuclear, of course, unless they can bring the cost of reactors down. Looking at emissions, it isn't just power plant emissions, it's emissions to move the fuel. It's also pipeline leaks, slag piles, and a lot of other things you just don't need to put up with renewables. It's a huge win for everyone, except the fossil fuel exporting countries and some megacorps. Which brings me to the next point. Something really interesting happened recently. The Saudis opened the oil taps after years of trying to maintain price levels. This is where the hard part of guessing the future comes in. We can't read minds. Well, some people think they can, but I'm just a little bit skeptical about their claims. Why have the Saudis opened the taps? Well, what if the Saudis are running their own projections and they think peak oil is already passed? In that case, they'd want to sell as much oil as they can while they can. They can accept a lower price than anyone else because their production costs are among the lowest. Or, well, maybe they're trying to kneecap someone by driving oil prices down. This is going to hurt Iran, Russia, Venezuela, Nigeria, the United States, and a pile of other countries. Yes, the United States. The U.S. is one of the largest producers on the planet, and this will cost U.S. producers. Maybe the Saudis are trying to gain friends in the global south by reducing their fuel bills. Pakistan had huge problems when the oil price hit $100 a barrel. So did a number of other countries. Low oil prices now are going to allow these countries to start installing renewables, assuming the corrupt bastards at the top just don't steal the money. See my videos on the One Piece revolutions. Everyone has a break right now. With fossil fuel generation costs low, Chinese overcapacity meaning that we have solar panels coming out the wazoo, dropping battery and wind turbine costs, there's a real opportunity to push the transition faster. And there are good reasons to. In the next section, which will be in a few days, I'm going to take on the transportation transition. This video will end up a lot longer than I thought it would, and I don't want to keep you tied up all night. Anyways, like, share, subscribe to all that guff. You got something out of this, and have a good evening.